But we welcome everybody back. And of course, we welcome Serge Grandbois, who has been with us uh, innumerable times and who is a very good friend of the channel, very seasoned, 43 years channeling Kris. My God. So the relationship is quite phenomenal that Serge has, the fluidity, the wisdom. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Serge. And yeah, there are a few new people here, Serge, tonight. So you're invited to give a little bit of the history of you and Kris, which you're going to channel here tonight.
Yeah, I see there's actually quite a number of people, some over a dozen for sure. Um, yeah, I would have to go back to maybe when I was about 13 or 14 years old when I came across some books that mentioned Edgar Casey. And I thought, that's interesting. And the more I read what was available at the time, concerning Edgar Casey, I thought to myself, I would love to be able to help people in a manner like that. Hmm. Little did I know what that desire would develop into. Um, and then, of course, being so young, you forget about it the next day, but things just kept bringing me back to Casey. And I discovered a few others. And one of them was called Ross Peterson. Um, that lived in Michigan, and he was considered the Edgar Casey of his day. And that was also intriguing. In fact, I even wrote to Ross saying that I had a avid interest in this, and he offered an open invitation to uh, visit and be mentored into it. But I was also underage, so I couldn't go. And I just kept reading books. I eventually came across The Nature of Personal Reality by Jane Roberts. And I had literally judged a book by its cover because on the cover of that paperback, um, and I know the backstory of the picture, but the picture on it, um, she already had thyroid issues, so her eyes were starting to bulge out. And I thought, there's no way I'm reading a book with that on the cover. And I put it back on the shelf. And several weeks later, I am back in that particular bookstore. And it's almost as if I was like in a trance-like state. And it's like I was separated from my body and I could watch my body walk to the shelf, take the book, go to the counter, pay for it, and walk out. And I'm going, okay, well, I guess I have to read it now. I bought the book. And it blew my mind. And I wanted to understand how to do that. Um, I did participate in a weekend workshop to develop altered states that could lead to a channeling experience. And after maybe a full month of trying, something happened. Um, I became aware that there was another voice in the room with my friend, and I suddenly realized, hey, that voice is coming out of my mouth. So that snapped me out of it. But my friend noticed it and asked questions, and he said, yeah, that really wasn't you. That was another voice, another accent, another person altogether. So to make a long story short, kept practicing until I could hold that particular state for at least an hour. And I like they say, the rest is history. I just went with it. So that's a long, long time for me, anyways. I mean, this more than half my life doing this. I'm 70 now. So that is quite different. and I wouldn't change it for the world. And that's it in a nutshell. And I mean a very tiny nutshell.
And we're so honored that you're here. Not just that you made that life so beautiful, but that you have been with us now for Serge, I think 8 or 9 months you have been
Yeah,
channeling in this group.
something
Something along
something
those
like
lines.
that. Yeah.
Oh,
Quite a few months at it all the same.
November 7th was the first one.
Oh, wow. It's almost a year.
And I've had the opportunity of Serge and Kris's information for 2 decades now, and have gained immeasurably from it, learned immensely from it. And my channeling journey, I'd have to say, is largely in part to the energy that I connected with in Kris. So yeah, there's a deep appreciation there as well.
Sure, blame me.
Well, if you're gonna be blamed for something, it might as well be that.
Yes, yes. I fully agree. I'll take it. Thank you. Yeah, it's been interesting to see you grow and evolve in that area as well.
it's a beautiful thing because, Chuck has been part of this group as well. A very important part of the group. He comes regularly to channel. In fact, he's channeling, I think, next week. So it's beautiful to see the beautiful coherence that the group has brought about.
Yep. Chuck started October 24th, in case you were wondering.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway, Serge, it's all back to you. It's your show right now.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Now we trust that you are all comfortable, and we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you also, Kris.
It is an interesting time within which you find your existence. Sometimes it's considered unsettling world situations, events, and times. And many people in all manner of categories often wonder what is happening, often wonder what is going on, how can they deal with the situations in various countries, apparent upheavals here and there. Does that sound familiar to you?
Very much so.
Indeed. Now, we don't pretend to even have all the answers, but we may be able to shed a little bit of light, just a tiny spark, so to speak, that may open your own eyes. And the main point is not only that these are difficult times, people struggle with comprehension and understanding of what is happening, trying to make sense of it. But it is also important to understand that, first of all, each and every one of you is a participant in the play or the narratives that are being worked out on the world stage, just as you are also the creator of the narratives that occur in your personal life. And trying to make sense of it with ordinary reason and logic can sometimes be exhausting. Suffice it to say that you function in two worlds simultaneously, one of which is the one you consider your ordinary physical life, a physical world, and all of the events and conditions and circumstances that make up that world. And then you also exist in a massive collective You might call it the collective subconscious. On that particular stage, you work out multiple issues simultaneously, especially in the domain of trying to understand how to use your own personal belief systems and how to gain knowledge and wisdom and information from the understanding. So your world situation at this particular point is a display of the variety of beliefs that make up that collective world. And some of you might think, well, I don't like some of the things that are going on. And that is not the point. Some of you may also think, well, I don't particularly believe in the things that are going on. And yet they are going on all the same, which indicates that there is a part of you that is still subscribing to some of these issues, even though you might not consciously agree with our statement. Otherwise, you would not have any experience of it whatsoever. So, in a nutshell, if you like, the world as it is right now is a display of the many different kinds of beliefs that make up the psychological atmosphere of your reality. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, is not the point. The whole point is to recognize what parts of that world may trigger you. And those triggers, emotional and feeling otherwise, are part of the energy that is being displayed. And if it actually makes you uncomfortable, it is a good idea to actually pay attention to the tone or the energy that makes you uncomfortable and trace it back to particular feelings and emotional states that you entertain in order to diffuse your own connection. Work out some of these activities, this energy within you, and release it. No longer feed it, no longer give it any attention. It doesn't mean that you have to do like the proverbial ostrich and stick your head in the sand, which is something ostriches do not do, by the way. But the idea is get to recognize what particular triggers is working its way through you and embrace all of you, even those parts or aspects of you you are not comfortable with. Because if you just shove them aside, you are basically doing the old out of sight, out of mind, which can make it ferment even more, make it produce more energy. So by putting it out in the light of your consciousness, dealing with your own personal issues, you would go a long way to remedy whatever may ail you, whatever pain you are experiencing at some level. This is perhaps just a short little exercise in helping you recognize what is transpiring in your own consciousness. And that may go a long way in bringing resolution and respite in your own situation. Does this make any sense to you?
Yes, thank you.
Indeed.
It is in many ways to your own advantage to venture into what some people call your shadow side as a means to acquire peace of mind and tranquility, which leads to better health and a better life. Might there be any inquiries or observations? Please feel free.
Christine, you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, nice to meet
Indeed. Indeed.
you. I think you pretty much answered my question with all that,
We
but I'm,
did not mean to peek into your mind, but sometimes it
I'm going to
happens.
ask it anyways. Many of us feel a deep inner knowing of hybrid lineage, but also experience some doubt or fragmentation at times. What practices or states of being most help us integrate your frequency into our daily lives?
Please provide context.
Mm, I'm not sure how to put it into words. Um,
How does it feel to you?
it creates an anxiety. Even though I know where it's coming from, it still manifests as an anxiety feeling.
Yes. And listen to the unique thing about your quote unquote physical reality or plane of existence. You did not come here to simply live a life of smiles and dancing 24 hours a day. You have energy, which is always in movement. That energy sometimes is surprising or even shocking to you because you may have a particular expectation, but the reality is something else. So, the point of your experience in this reality is to learn how to use your mind and the energy that you produce from it, from your thinking patterns, from your thoughts and beliefs in particular.
Yeah.
And there will never come a time when all of a sudden everything is hunky dory.
Okay.
This will not happen. This plane of existence is, you could say, similar to the school of hard knocks. This is where you come to hash out your own expectations and beliefs. The happiness part comes from understanding that all of your events, conditions, and circumstances are the direct result of your energy. All of them.
Right.
No one, no other being is responsible for how you feel at all.
Right.
That is entirely on you. It is a you issue.
Right.
That is sometimes the most difficult part to let go of. Basically, what do you mean someone else is not responsible for my pain, my anxiety, my troubles, and my suffering? I want somebody else to be responsible. If it is not a human, it must be a supernatural being somewhere out in the clouds. And those do not necessarily exist for the simple reason that you create every single aspect, every single iota, every single atom and molecule of your experience. Even those so-called supernatural beings in the sky, they
Mm.
are the products of your energy. Plain and simple. And the moment you grasp that, you basically are on your way to a better kind of experience because you know nobody is meant to trip you up. If you trip and fall down, you are responsible for getting up. Look at little children when they are learning to walk. You have children. Do you remember when they learned to walk? They might have fallen hundreds of times. Did you ever see a child go, well, look it, I have fallen on my behind at least a dozen times. I'm done with this. No way I'm doing it again. Every single child will persevere because there is a built-in drive to pick themselves up and eventually walk, eventually run, and then eventually go through all of your kitchen cupboards and empty them because this is what they do. Correct?
Correct.
So
Thank
as
you.
human beings, you may sometimes fall down, pick yourselves up, dust your feet, and continue to run and play with life. Life is meant to be both something you deal with and at the same time something that you enjoy. And we would, on that note, point out that you chose to come here because you knew pitting yourself up against your own challenges was going to be an eye-opening experience. So you came here because you love this kind of reality. You love being challenged. Even if at times it appears to be, oh, so discouraging. All human beings actually love the living experience. Otherwise, you wouldn't have bothered. You would have just skipped it right off.
Right.
So the more you can grok this, the easier it becomes. And if you need a little bit of grounding, very simple. Find a nice little park, one that doesn't have too many dogs in it. Take your shoes and socks off as long as there's no snow, and ground yourself. Connect to the energy of the earth.
That does help tremendously.
And it recharges your whole system.
Yeah, it really does.
So revel in the energy that you are, because that is what you are. You're not just a body.
Right.
In fact, if you ask yourself and you put your finger on your nose, what is that? It is your nose, your eyes, your lips, your fingers, but they are not you. You are not your body.
Right.
So you are something else. You are the energy that keeps it going. And you keep that going by your attitudes and expectations. So use that power. Each and every one of you have been endowed by your own selves with one of the most empowering of all tools, your mind. Not your brain, your mind. Use it. And you will be surprised at what you can embrace, allow, accept, and overcome.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Indeed, you are most welcome.
Thank you,
Great.
Kris. Always great to come into your energy again. Other than the cetaceans, are there going to be, and I'm saying this in a more specific way because I know every form of consciousness on Earth is participating in open contact. But are there any other animals that humans would consider besides the cetacean nation involved in open contact?
Apart from humans and cetaceans, the majority of visible life forms on your planet are not necessarily preoccupied with that at all. But they are there to provide various forms of support. Many animals are far more intelligent than human beings have surmised. And a great majority of animals, given the opportunity, will display love, will display reciprocation, because it is a basic tenet of consciousness itself. Everything is consciousness. It just appears in different interpretations according to your own physical form. So you interpret consciousness and energy according to your platform. So animals, for instance, an eagle can see a tiny creature a mile away, which you would have trouble distinguishing something 100 feet away. So every consciousness, every manifestation of it has awareness to varying degrees according to their form and according to their particular platform. Human beings and cetaceans have a decided advantage in a particular way, is that you have a different kind of reasoning mind, different than most other animals. And once you, as we suggested earlier to Christine, use your mind, it is a powerful tool. Use it to actively and constructively create your experience. And again, even though you might still encounter challenges, the challenges are not meant as an opposition, but as an opportunity to break your own glass ceilings. Does that make sense to you? Now, there are also non-physical forms on your world. And by that, we mean non-human-like forms. So you have, for instance, trees. And you may think that a tree is a lone, unique form, but a forest is more likely to be one particular expression of itself. An entire forest, which is why sometimes when you meander joyfully and listlessly through a forest, you may feel somewhat euphoric because you are surrounded by a massive entity. And that is why we suggested grounding, especially with shoes and socks off, so that you can connect with that electromagnetic energy they give. Does that answer your inquiry?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Kris.
Indeed.
Alex, please.
Hey, Kris. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us today.
Indeed.
Um, in most of my conscious waking life, I feel immortal, eternal, limitless, free, happy to be, watching this unfolding from this direct place. And I have a desire to help others get rid of the illusion of their separation.
That
I
is
also
indeed
recognize.
a commendable and worthwhile desire. We would recommend to do it in a manner that makes it so they feel invited and not pressured.
Definitely. And that was the question, is how do I do that
Hmm.
with respect to the law of opposition?
Hmm. What do you define as the law of opposition?
I mean, in that as soon as I recognize a preference and label it, I'm implicitly creating the spectrum of that, including the opposite of that.
Hmm. So, as we suggested to lovely Christine earlier, everything that transpires in your experience is the direct result of your own belief systems. Therefore, law of opposition exists in your mind. You are creating it as you go along and for a specific purpose, to look at what may trigger the resistance so that you can embrace it and learn from the experience itself. Does that make some sense to you?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that I think I do a fairly good job of spotting it in the wild, and in that moment, that opposition dissolves.
Indeed. You can, for instance, ask yourself, why am I creating my own opposition? The answer may come quickly, or it may come in a little while, or later on. We are least expecting it, but it will come. And it may come in a cascading effect. You'll get part of it today, another bit tomorrow, a little more next day, but it will eventually provide a more full picture of the situation, and you can put it together in such a way as to release the opposition itself. Always trust that you are creating the situation, therefore you can create the solution. And that will serve you for a long time.
I think that answers my question. Thank you.
You are most welcome.
Ray, please.
And thank you again. I know in our reality, when we see rainbows or prisms, we only experience the colors which we are physically able to perceive, but all of the colors of the rainbow and light structures come through those. I was wondering if they maintained that grouping as a category, like we would interpret as color, in other forms of expression in other realities.
Very interesting question. So your eyes and the rods and the cones in your eyes are able to interpret only a certain spectrum of light. In and of itself, color doesn't truly exist in the way you experience it. It is an interpretation and a projection. So it is at its core consciousness and energy. And other life forms may or may not see the same. And outside of your own system of experience, in other planes of existence, they may have a completely different engagement with the consciousness and energy displayed. Some may never see rainbows. Some may see far more colors, perhaps even hundreds of different colors that you would not be able to interpret, especially in the infrared spectrum. So your experience is something you give meaning to. In other experiences, they would give meaning to their particular engagement. But all in all, there is always a certain level of engagement and interpretation. That is how you make sense of your own energies. And others may make sense of their own energy. There are animals on your planet that cannot see colors the way you do. Bees only see a certain spectrum of the infrared. Butterflies, something else. And in other realities, where you might see a bird or a bee or a butterfly, other beings may see an entirely different looking creature, because they would interpret the light emitted from those forms of consciousness in another way. So on your world, you see the residual effects of what you call dinosaurs. You see their ancient bones. If you were alive millions of years ago, you would have seen them in a particular form similar to what your artists and paleontologists and so on and so the various ologists depict them as. In other planes of existence, they might be in a completely different manifestation. They would interpret that energy differently. How they would do that is something else, but it would be different from your own. Does that make some sense to you?
Yep, that's along the lines of what I was thinking, and thank you for being so expressive on that. And I'm going to slip in another quick question. Are there any energies which are not expressed in all dimensions?
There are dimensions where the idea of expression is so foreign to yours, you might not be able to even conceive of it. But in one form or another, consciousness makes form. That is the plain, simple, basic rule. Consciousness makes form, not the other way around. Some of your scientists like to think that a form has consciousness, but it is the other way around. A consciousness makes form according to the spectrum it happens to be in. So your plane of existence is one of those spectrums, and it manifests in a particular way on your plane of existence, but on another, it may be something entirely different. You have stories of giants and Sasquatch and all sorts of interesting creatures, and that is how some of those other energies appear in your reality, and in their reality, you might be the boogeyman because they might have a hard time understanding what you are doing with your consciousness. So there is a certain playful tit for tat here. Does that make some sense to you?
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Heidi, please.
Hello.
Hello. Nice to chat with you again.
Yes, nice to chat with you too. So my question is, to me, seems a little bit out there, and then also not out there so far. My question is about people's loved ones, our loved ones that surround, myself and others' loved ones that surround them. And I'm wondering, can they sense right away when one of us can sense them? And how does that work?
Interesting inquiry. And maybe it is a little bit out there, but for that matter, you are also a little bit out there, which is a very nice thing to be. So, loved ones, let us rephrase that and put it to you this way. Every single consciousness is connected to every single other consciousness. You could say there is one consciousness only, but that consciousness is multifaceted and multidimensional, so it expresses itself in as many forms and ways as possible. So your loved ones are tied to you. You are tied to your loved ones. They are tied to others, and others are tied to you, and so on and so forth. You are all entangled in a particular way due to energy. Even if you were in one dimension and a loved one suddenly found themselves in another dimension entirely, there is still a link. There is still a connection because time and space in that respect are not existent. So you are always connected, and some may respond and some may not. Some may be preoccupied, if you like, but there is still a certain degree of awareness, even if it is only subconsciously, that there is always a connection. And that particular kind of subconsciously is so vast that even Carl Jung would be stupefied. Not Sigmund Freud, that's another issue. But the so-called subconscious is your actual domain. We refer to it as dream time. Uncle Seth referred to it as frameworks, 2, 3, and so on. That environment is where everything exists. Everything, all consciousness. So you can learn to tap into it in interesting little ways, simply by learning to pay attention to those little prompts, those little nudges in your own awareness that brings you a particular thought that can lead you down an interesting rabbit hole, if you like. Do you understand?
Yeah, I think I do.
Indeed. Your connections to each other are vast and largely ignored. You may think because you create artificial divisions. You think there is the past, the present, and the future, and they never meet because they are apparent a linear progression. But the future is connected to your past, and your past is connected to the future, and they're all connected to the present moment. You have exchanges. And this is how you grow as a species. You grow behind your ideas of time and space. The notion of time and space is simply a means to try and display your growth and your experiences. Once you are completely removed from the physical environment, that whole notion of time space is gone. Everything happens in a spacious present moment. Does that also make sense to you?
I'm tripping out on the expansion
No, indeed.
of thoughts.
And it is a
connected to
good trip.
that.
It is a good trip because it is your natural environment.
Yeah, that feels
When
very
you
expensive.
direct your attention through your senses at the so-called outside world, we don't want to imply that you disconnect from your subconscious connection, but you divert your attention just like if you are cooking and all of a sudden you think about something at work. Momentarily, you have disconnected from your cooking, but then you come back to it. Does that make some sense? Hmm. So play with your awareness, play with your consciousness, have fun. We trust that helps you.
It does. Thank you.
Hi, Kris. I have a small question here. So there's mind, and in my concept, there's heart. And so mind-heart coherence becomes very important. And from there, I can see the external as being a pointer into something that I need to bring into better coherence from the perspective of that mind-heart. And from there, I can ripple out some overall coherence into the field that I am. And from there, I can relate to others finally, or other units of consciousness, for lack of a better word. So help me out. Is that?
Hmm. So there is only one field. It is consciousness. You direct your attention to a neighborhood of that field that you call yourself and your experience. But you are still connected to the whole. You can never be unconnected or disconnected from the whole. It is not possible due to the properties of consciousness itself. So when you refer to mind-heart coherence, you are trying to balance certain understandings and certain experiences in such a way that it makes sense to the logical, rational, intellectual properties, which is fine. It is important. It should never be discounted. And the logical, rational, intellectual parts of you, as human beings, you often discount it, thinking that if you are more emotional and you are therefore more heart connected and therefore have a better understanding, but you have all of the connections. So make certain that when you approach a mind-heart coherence, you include all of yourself, all of you. Now, you may think, like many, that you understand what that means, but as human beings, you have just a small understanding what all of you means. So if you, for instance, look out at your world, let's say you are in space on your International Space Station and you look at the planet, you look at the world, you look at the countries, you look at the people, you look at the other planets. That's not all. That's just a tiny, tiny little slice. Your planet, your solar system, your galaxy, your cosmos, again, is but a small slice of time space. So much activity goes on, unseen and unexperienced, simply because you need to focus in a particular way to carry out your own purposes. But overall, that mind-heart coherence is meant to bring a certain sense of harmony, a certain sense of balance so that you can understand perhaps better how your own belief systems function and translate energy into activity. Does that make some sense to you?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Kris. Ray, please.
Thanks, Luis, and thanks, Kris. It's my understanding that for open contact or after open contact, some representatives of the previously in our chronological linear reckoning, the Mayans will be coming back, and there will also be Lemurians who are coming back to certain portions of our planet. Can you elaborate on that and any other civilization which may be, in our terms, coming back, even though it all happens at once, please?
Your planet has experienced various phases of transformation. Some civilizations have completely disappeared willingly in some terms, even though it may appear that they were eliminated through some kind of natural catastrophe or cataclysm, whether it is from meteors, earthquakes, floods, volcanic eruption, and so on. These are just the means of manifestation for them to move on to another plane of existence. But they all exist, and some will be making themselves known. Mayans, Incas, and perhaps even those that predated even so-called pre-dynastic Egypt, because the pyramids are very, very ancient. And they were not created just so that nobody could sleep on them. But there are many others, some which you have never heard of. And interestingly enough, there are many in the future that, how do we say, many of them have appeared in your past, but they actually come from the future. If you look at many of the ancient Inca and Mayan carvings, many of them actually have futuristic depictions. So do many ancient Egyptian carvings on ancient temple walls. So they were never part of your past in that sense of the word, but they were able to leave imprints, post-it notes, as reminders of what your future can hold. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, that is very exciting, and I appreciate all those additional details. That is just wonderful. And if no one else has a question, I'm going to bring one up for everybody. Get back to it. Do any of us present here have multiple lives or counterparts currently on this timeline? Because I know for expansion, we want to get a lot of front row seats on the most exciting things that happen because that's where the greatest challenges and therefore the greatest growth opportunities are.
Very interesting question. And yes, many of you have at least 3 to 4 contemporary incarnations in different areas. Perhaps if, let's say, you, for instance, might have one that lives in a more impoverished situation, so that you can subconsciously understand a little bit more of the dynamics of belief systems. You might also have another that is of a different gender, so that you can also understand a little more of the energetic interplay. And you might also have another one that, for all intents and purposes, you might consider, or someone else might consider, to be a completely different personality, perhaps one quite unsavory to your own, just so that there is a more rounded out sense of self. Does that make some sense to you?
Yes, is that particular for all of our earthly experiences, I will say, or more so for this particular one because it is so exciting and drawing so much attention?
There is that. And for instance, you might experience an life in another historical era where you would be a hermit. Since you already have a certain liking for it, there is one that is in ancient Greek mountains, approximately 1500 to 1800 years into your so-called past, where you prefer to avoid much human interaction and just not necessarily contemplate the lint in your navel, but just have a feel for the energy of the universe, and in particular, where you can hear the songs of the stars. Where do you think some of the great Greek philosophers came up with the notion of the celestial harmonics? Because there were people that can and could hear the stars, speak to them. That's a different level of consciousness altogether. So you can imagine, for instance, if you go out in your countryside late at night, not afraid of werewolves and things like that, especially because it is now October, and look up to the heavens and just lend an inner ear to the stars themselves as far as you can see them, and open the heart, you might be surprised at what you can pick up.
I am
Now,
definitely
they will definitely not be dancing and singing the polka.
nor Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, I'm
No,
guessing. But
No,
most
no.
of them are not so fond of that.
they're not so little and they're not twinkling.
Hmm.
But yes, thank you so much for that detail. Anyone else have a question
Yes,
or a comment?
Jennifer
Okay.
has the floor.
I just wanted to say thank you for mentioning the songs of the stars because I actually had a dream during my nap today about that exact thing and hearing the songs of the stars. So thank you. That was a wonderful synchronicity.
Indeed, there always are, usually. And you might also use the dream as a portal to further that kind of connection. Because there are other yous that do that. That's why you got the dream. They may not necessarily live on this earth plane as you know it, but they do that.
Yes, thank you.
Indeed. Now, might we return Joseph?
Yes, indeed. And we thank
Indeed.
Kris.
We thank you all for your consideration and kindness.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kris.
Fantastic as always, Serge and Kris.
Master Serge, so grateful to have you.
Was a good chat.
Excellent. And you came out very strong, meaning I could see that old vitality coming through better and better and better. So that's what I felt. I hope
Cool.
everybody, it was a beautiful session. And
I got a lot out of it.
yeah, well, it was, and the typical thing happens, questions that were being thought of are being answered before the person gets to it. There it is.
That often happens.
Yep. And Serge, before you take off, I also wanted to let you know that in a previous session, you had advised me that I had two shamans, one male and one female, who were watching my connections with channeling very interestingly, or they were very interested because they wanted to incorporate that in their being. And then later that week, I had a dream, and the male shaman, who appeared to be an indigenous male individual with straight black hair, short, he actually clued me in where he was channeling the inner earth beings which had come through me. And he just wanted to communicate that he was able to do that. And so thank you very much, because had I not known that and expressed that curiosity, that might not have proven to be relevant for me.
Did
So
you ask him for a commission?
no, but I'm glad you don't either, because you are the
Serge,
gift that keeps on giving.
yeah, we need your bank information for that.
Okay, I'll give you my PayPal.
Your
That was the
PayPal.
Nigerian prince that I was supposed to be connected
Nigerian?
with.
That sounds a little suspect now.
Hey, are you the one that sent that email? I saw this joke too on Facebook somewhere. Somebody put a picture of a poor Nigerian prince sitting in his room, so lonely because nobody answers his emails, and he's got tons and tons of money.
It's got everybody's money
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay,
So,
then.
we thank you so much, Serge.
Yes.
Joseph, as well known by many,
Kris,
and Kris,
yes.
of course, that's the
Okay,
name that,
cool.
that he uses. You're welcome to stay a few more minutes. This is open chat time here, and
well,
anybody
and-
that has yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, before we do that, Serge, if you want to talk a little bit about the classes that you offer, it's just so people know where
Sure.
to find you, please.
Well, usually I have a Facebook page or group for channeling Kris. And we offer, normally it's an 8-week on one topic. And we take a couple of weeks break, and then we get back into another topic. Normally, sometimes Kris will extend it for 9 or even 10 weeks, or he'll just continue for another 8 weeks. But that's very rare. It's usually 8 weeks. We had a very nice one right now going on. It is, interestingly enough, Kris called it oddments. And you need to look that word up. Oddment, Oddment. What is an oddment? Look that up. Oddments of consciousness and something else. But it's quite interesting, actually.